when 9-year-old Naomi burst into the community center clutching a mysterious keychain and screaming, "He's coming," 3 reformed ex-gang members had no idea they were about to face their biggest test of redemption. What started as a desperate plea for help would expose a conspiracy that threatened an entire neighborhood. Like, if you love stories of courage, subscribe for more inspiring tales, and comment where you're watching from. The scorching El Paso sun beats down on 9-year-old Naomi Reyes as she runs through the streets, her small chest heaving with each desperate breath. The worn keychain with 218, etched into its metal surface, cuts into her palm as she grips it tighter. The numbers her father once told her would mean salvation. Car exhaust mingles with the aroma of street tacos from the loncheras, creating a thick haze that burns her throat. She bursts through the doors of the Monte Vista Community Center, her sneakers squeaking against the polished linoleum. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead as she stumbles into the main room where Caleb Ortiz, Trevor Banks, and Javier Mendez are running their weekly job skills workshop. 20-something participants look up from their resume templates, startled by the interruption. "He's coming." Naomi's voice cracks as tears stream down her dirt-stained cheeks. Caleb, a lean man in his late 20s with careful eyes and calloused hands, immediately stands. His chair scrapes against the floor. Trevor, broad-shouldered and wearing a faded Monte Vista Community Center polo, exchanges a glance with Javier, whose pen hovers frozen over a clipboard. Naomi hurls the keychain onto the plastic folding table. It lands with a sharp metallic clink that seems to echo in the sudden silence. Her hands shake as she wipes her nose on her sleeve, leaving a wet streak across her cheek. "Mija, what happened?" Elena Rodriguez, a community worker organizing pamphlets nearby, approaches with a concerned frown. Her voice carries the gentle authority of someone who's seen too many scared children. An elderly man taking English lessons in the corner, Mr. Santos, half rises from his seat. "Does the girl need water?" he asks in heavily accented English. The workshop participants whisper among themselves. A young woman near the back nudges her neighbor. "Isn't that Caleb? The one who used to—" Another participant shushes her quickly. Caleb's eyes fix on the keychain, and his face drains of color. The number 218 stares back at him like a ghost from another life. His mouth goes dry as memories flood back. Late nights, the smell of fryer oil, a kind man who asked no questions when Caleb needed help the most. Naomi struggles to form the words, her breath coming in short gasps. Conrad Har... She can't finish the name, but she doesn't need to. Caleb's knees nearly buckle as he whispers, "Daniel Reyes." The room seems to tilt. Trevor steps closer, his protective instincts kicking in despite not understanding the full picture. Javier sets down his clipboard entirely, reading the shift in Caleb's posture like a language he once knew too well. Naomi nods frantically, tears flowing freely now. "My papa," he said, "if I ever needed help." She points at the keychain with a trembling finger. Earlier that morning, the antiseptic smell of the community clinic still clung to Lucia Reyes's clothes as she and Naomi walked home. The plastic bag of medications rustled against Lucia's hip with each step. A reminder of the mounting medical bills that kept her awake at night. Naomi skipped beside her, humming a song she'd learned in school, her backpack bouncing with each step as they rounded the corner onto their street. 3 black SUVs sat parked outside their apartment building like predators waiting to strike. Men in crisp white polos with Hargrove Structural Consulting embroidered on the chest moved around the building's exterior, taking photographs and making notes on official-looking clipboards. "What are they doing, Mama?" Naomi whispered, instinctively moving closer to her mother. Lucia's grip tightened on the medication bag as one of the men, tall with perfectly styled hair, looked up from his tablet. His smile was practiced, cold. "Mrs. Reyes, I presume?" "Yes," Lucia replied carefully, her accent thickening with nervousness. "I'm Brad Morrison, structural specialist with Hargrove Consulting. We're here regarding the incident in apartment 3B. He gestured toward their building with theatrical concern. "The fire damage you caused last month has compromised the entire structure." "It wasn't a fire," Lucia protested, her cheeks burning. "It was just smoke from—" "Ma'am, we have photographic evidence of charring and heat damage." Morrison's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being unquestioned. "Your negligence has put every resident at risk." An older woman, Mrs. Alvarez from 2A, emerged from the building. "Lucia did nothing wrong. The stove was old, it—" Morrison dismissed her with a wave. "Ma'am, this is official city business. Please step aside." Other residents began gathering in doorways and windows. Young couple from 1C whispered urgently to each other. A mother pulled her child away from Naomi, muttering something about troublemakers. The good news, Morrison continued, his smile never wavering, is that Mr. Hargrove is personally invested in resolving this situation quickly and fairly. He'll be here this afternoon to discuss relocation options. Lucia's hands trembled as she fumbled for her keys. Naomi pressed against her side, sensing the danger even if she couldn't understand it fully. As they climbed the stairs, an official notice was already taped to their door. Evacuation pending. 24-hour notice. Inside their small apartment, the familiar scents of cumin and worn fabric provided little comfort. Lucia sat heavily on their second-hand couch, the medication bottles spilling across the coffee table as she buried her face in her hands. Naomi had never seen her mother cry before, and the sight sent ice through her veins. The apartment felt different now, smaller, more fragile. Every creak of the floorboards seemed like evidence against them. Naomi slipped into her parents' bedroom, where her father's presence still lingered in the cologne bottle on the dresser and the work shirt hanging in the closet. She pulled open the bottom drawer of the nightstand, where Daniel's few personal items rested like treasures. His old wallet, a photo of him in his food truck uniform, and there, wrapped in tissue paper, the metal keychain with 218, etched deep into its surface. Beneath it, a yellow, sticky note in her father's careful handwriting. Caleb Ortiz, Monte Vista Community Center. If you ever need help, show him 218. He'll understand. Naomi had asked about it once. When she was 7, Daniel had been washing dishes at the kitchen sink, his sleeves rolled up, humming an old Mexican ballad. "Papa, why do you have that number?" He'd paused, soap suds dripping from his hands. "Sometimes, mija, we help people who are lost, and sometimes they help us back. It's like a promise that good things can come from dark places." Was Caleb lost, Papa? Very lost, but he found his way. Daniel had dried his hands and knelt beside her. "Remember this, Naomi. Being scared doesn't make you weak. Running for help when you need it, that makes you brave." Back in the community center, Caleb stared at the keychain as memories washed over him. Daniel covering for him when gang members came looking. Daniel finding him work washing dishes in the food truck. Daniel never asking questions, never judging, just offering steady work and quiet wisdom during the worst period of Caleb's life. Trevor cleared his throat. "Man, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," Caleb whispered, picking up the keychain. The metal was warm from Naomi's desperate grip. Javier approached cautiously. "Who's Daniel Reyes?" "The man who saved my life," Caleb said simply, without asking for anything in return. Naomi's words tumble out between hiccups and gasps as she explains about Conrad Hargrove, the fake inspection reports, the blame placed on her mother for an old stove that barely worked anyway. In the background, the community center thrums with its usual afternoon energy, basketball bouncing in the gymnasium, children's laughter from the after-school program, the hum of ancient air conditioning struggling against the Texas heat. Elena brings Naomi a cup of water and sits beside her, one protective hand on the girl's shoulder. "Take your time, mija. Tell us what happened." He said Mama almost burned down the whole building," Naomi whispers, her small fingers wrapping around the paper cup. "But it was just the stove. It made smoke, and Mama called the fire department right away. Nobody got hurt." Caleb's jaw tightens as he listens. He recognizes the pattern. Powerful people using small incidents to justify bigger agendas. It's the same manipulation he witnessed growing up on these streets, just wearing a better suit. Trevor runs a hand through his graying hair, glancing at his watch. "Man, I've got to pick up my daughter from school in 2 hours. If I get mixed up in this, you think they won't come for your building next?" Javier interjects quietly. His voice carries the weight of someone who's learned not to trust the system. Rich guys like Hargrove, they don't stop with one building. Around the table, the workshop participants have given up pretending to work on their resumes. A young mother clutches her infant closer. An older man who's been looking for work since his factory closed shakes his head. They all understand displacement, even if they've never faced it quite like this. Caleb picks up the keychain again, feeling its worn edges. "Daniel never asked me to pay him back. Said helping people was like throwing seeds in the wind. You never know where they'll grow." Elena's phone buzzes. She checks the message and frowns. "I just got word from a contact at City Planning. Hargrove's got 3 more buildings in this neighborhood under structural review. This isn't just about Naomi's family. The weight of that revelation settles over the group. Trevor stops checking his watch. Javier straightens in his chair. "So what do we do?" Naomi asks, looking between the three men who seem to hold her family's future in their hands. Caleb stands slowly, pocketing the keychain. "We do this right. No shortcuts, no old habits. We gather evidence. We document everything. And we use the system the way it's supposed to work." "And if the system's rigged," Trevor asks, "then we make sure everyone can see how rigged it is," Caleb replies. He looks down at Naomi, and his voice softens. "Next time you run through this city, kid, it won't be because you're running away from something." The afternoon sun has turned the asphalt into waves of heat as Caleb's beat-up Honda, Trevor's work truck, and Javier's borrowed sedan pull up to Naomi's building. The contrast is immediately apparent. Their modest vehicles look shabby beside the gleaming SUVs still parked outside. Through the open car windows, the sounds of the neighborhood drift in. Children playing in a nearby courtyard, Spanish music from someone's radio, the distant rumble of the city bus. But there's an underlying tension. Like the moment before a storm breaks, Brad Morrison and two other consultants look up from their clipboards as the trio approaches. Morrison's practiced smile falters slightly when he sees the Monte Vista Community Center logo on their polo shirts and the small recording device in Caleb's hand. "Gentlemen," Morrison says, adjusting his stance, "this is private property unless you're residents." "We're here on behalf of the residents," Caleb interrupts smoothly, pulling out a folder. "I'm Caleb Ortiz, community advocate. These are my colleagues, Trevor Banks and Javier Mendez. We'd like to review the structural assessment documentation." Mrs. Alvarez appears in her window 2 stories up, making the sign of the cross. A teenager Naomi's age peeks out from behind a parked car. "Nico, whose family moved here from Juarez last year. You look familiar," Nico calls to Trevor, his voice carrying a note of suspicion. "Didn't you used to run with Los Hermanos?" A few other residents turn to look. Mr. Gutierrez, an elderly man who's lived in the building for 20 years, shakes his head. "Once a gangster, always a gangster," he mutters loudly enough for everyone to hear. Trevor's face hardens, but he keeps his voice level. "That was a long time ago, kid." Morrison senses an opportunity. "Perhaps we should verify the credentials of these advocates before proceeding." Javier steps forward, his community college business certificate visible in his shirt pocket. "Here's what we need to see: the original structural report, the inspection dates, and the incident reports filed with the city." As Caleb's phone records Morrison's increasingly evasive responses, more residents gather. Some are supportive, others wary. The complexity of neighborhood dynamics plays out in real time, trust earned and broken over years of shared struggle. Morrison's phone buzzes. He checks it and his expression changes. "Gentlemen, Mr. Hargrove will be here within the hour. I suggest you have this situation resolved by then." The implied threat hangs in the air like the heat shimmer rising from the asphalt. But instead of intimidation, Caleb feels something else, the familiar clarity that comes with knowing exactly what he's fighting for. "We'll be ready," he says simply. The next hour passes in a blur of strategic movement through El Paso's municipal maze. Caleb takes the courthouse. Trevor heads to the city planning office, and Javier canvasses the building's current and former maintenance workers. Inside the courthouse, the air conditioning provides relief from the heat, but not from the bureaucratic chill. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead as Caleb navigates between filing cabinets and uncooperative clerks. The smell of copy toner and old paper fills the air as he photographs every document he can legally access. "These inspection dates don't match," he mutters to himself, comparing reports. One form shows the building inspection occurring 3 days before Lucia's kitchen incident. Another shows it happening 2 days after. Meanwhile, Trevor sits across from a tired-looking city planner who's been on the job for 15 years. The man's desk is cluttered with coffee rings and stacks of permit applications. "Look, I remember when this Hargrove guy started buying up properties," the planner says quietly, glancing around the office. "Always seemed to have structural problems that needed immediate attention. Always had the solutions ready, too." Javier's investigation yields different fruit. He finds Carlos, the building's former maintenance supervisor, at a taqueria 3 blocks away. Carlos stirs his coffee nervously as he speaks. "The electrical was fine when I left last month," Carlos insists. "Old, yes, but up to code. I don't understand why my signature is on reports saying otherwise." Back at the building, the afternoon grows heavy with more than heat. A black sedan has joined the Hargrove vehicles. Mrs. Alvarez notices it first, crossing herself again as she calls down to Lucia, who's been waiting anxiously by their apartment door. Misha, more cars are coming. Naomi clutches her father's keychain, sitting on the front steps where she can watch for Caleb's return. The metal has grown warm in her palm, and she finds herself whispering the same prayer her grandmother taught her. Dios mío, protect the good people. Nico approaches cautiously, his earlier suspicion replaced by curiosity. Your friends? They're really trying to help. My papa said Caleb was a good man, Naomi replies. Papa never lied to me. Mr. Gutierrez overhears from his usual spot on the sidewalk. He's been watching the Hargrove people all afternoon, noting how they photograph only the building's worst angles, how they avoid talking to actual residents, despite his earlier harsh words about Trevor. Doubt creeps into his weathered features. When Caleb's phone rings, it's Elena from the community center. I got us 15 minutes at tomorrow's public city council session, she says. It's not much time, but if you can present evidence of fraud, we'll be there, Caleb promises, watching Morrison pace near the building's entrance. One way or another, we'll be ready. The pieces of Conrad Hargrove's scheme are becoming clearer with each document, each conversation, each forged signature. But time is running out, and the black sedan's tinted windows reflect the setting sun like dead eyes. As darkness settles over El Paso, the Monte Vista Community Center becomes an impromptu war room. The usual evening programs continue around them. Senior citizens playing dominoes in the corner, teenagers working on homework at nearby tables. But Caleb's group has claimed 3 tables near the windows, spreading out their evidence like puzzle pieces. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across photocopied documents. Empty coffee cups and crumpled napkins from the vending machine mark the hours of work. Elena has stayed late, helping organize testimonials while her own children do homework in the children's area. Look at this, Javier says, his finger tracing across a building permit. Same signature, but the handwriting pressure is different. This one's traced. Trevor squints at his laptop screen, comparing photos he took of the building's actual condition with the ones in Hargrove's reports. These cracks they're claiming are structural failures. They're surface level. I've seen worse damage in buildings that stood for another 20 years. But the pressure is mounting. Caleb's phone has been buzzing with unknown numbers all evening, calls that go to silence when he answers. Javier glances over his shoulder constantly. Old habits from a time when looking behind you meant survival. What if they use our past against us? Javier asks quietly. What if tomorrow we stand up there and they just say, "Why should you trust 3 ex-gang members?" The question hangs heavy in the recycled air. It's the fear they've all been carrying but haven't voiced. Because, comes a small voice from behind them. My papa trusted you. Naomi stands there in her school clothes, Lucia beside her looking exhausted but determined. Mama says we can't sleep in our apartment tonight, Mrs. Alvarez is letting us stay with her. Lucia sits heavily in an empty chair, her medication bag clutched in her hands. They posted another notice, final warning. Tomorrow at noon. They empty the building. Not if we have anything to say about it, Elena says firmly, gathering the scattered papers into organized stacks. As they work into the night, each person carries their own burden of doubt. Trevor texts his ex-wife, explaining why he might be late picking up their daughter tomorrow, his first missed visit in 6 months of rebuilding trust. Javier stares at his community college completion certificate, wondering if all his effort to build a legitimate life will crumble if old prejudices surface. But Naomi's presence changes something fundamental in the room. When she falls asleep in her chair, head pillowed on her arms, Lucia gently covers her with a community center jacket. The sight of that small, trusting form reminds them all what they're really fighting for. Caleb looks around at his unlikely team. A single mother, an overworked community organizer, 2 men still earning their place in legitimate society, and a sleeping girl who ran across the city because her dead father told her that help could be found in the most unexpected places. Tomorrow, he says quietly, we tell the truth, all of it, and we let the city decide who they want to believe. The morning of the city council session arrives with the kind of blazing Texas sunshine that makes everything seem possible and terrible at the same time. The Monte Vista Community Center has been transformed into a command center, with residents from not just Naomi's building, but from across the neighborhood, gathering to prepare their testimonies. Mrs. Alvarez sits at a corner table, practicing her speech in Spanish while Elena translates key phrases into English. Her hands shake slightly as she holds her notes, but her voice grows stronger with each repetition. I have lived in this building for 12 years. It is not perfect, but it is home. Mr. Gutierrez approaches Caleb hesitantly, his weathered face creased with something that might be embarrassment. I owe you an apology, Jovan. I watched those Hargrove people yesterday. Really watched them. They don't care about our safety. They care about our land. The acknowledgement means more than Caleb expected. We've all had to learn who to trust, Senor. Lucia sits with Naomi, both of them going over what Naomi has chosen to say. The girl has insisted on speaking, despite everyone's attempts to protect her from the spotlight. I want to tell them about Papa, she says simply, about how he said good people help each other, even when it's scary. Trevor works with Nico, who has volunteered to handle the presentation slides on his laptop. The teenager's initial suspicion has transformed into genuine enthusiasm as he's learned more about the evidence they've gathered. This is better than any video game, Nico admits, adjusting the projector. We're actually fighting the bad guys. But the morning also brings unwelcome visitors. A man in an expensive suit appears at the community center's entrance, speaking quietly with Elena. She returns to the group with a tense expression. That was Conrad Hargrove's attorney, she reports. He's questioning our legal right to present evidence at a public session, says we're not official representatives of the affected residents. Javier looks up from the stack of affidavits they've collected. How many signatures do we need to be official? More than we have time to get, Elena admits. The setback feels crushing until Mrs. Alvarez stands up, her practiced speech forgotten. I am the building's resident representative, she announces. I was elected 3 years ago to speak with management about repairs. If anyone has the right to speak for us, it's me. It's a thin legal thread, but it holds. As the group prepares to leave for City Hall, Caleb finds himself thinking about Daniel Reyes, a man he knew for less than 6 months, but who somehow understood exactly what Caleb needed to hear during the darkest period of his life. You ready for this? Trevor asks. Gathering his laptop bag, Caleb looks around at the unlikely group of allies, former gang members, immigrant families, elderly residents, and a 9-year-old girl clutching a keychain like a talisman. Daniel always said the best revenge against people who try to make you small is to prove them wrong by doing something bigger than they thought you were capable of. What if we're not capable of this? Javier asks quietly. Naomi overhears and looks up at him with those serious eyes that seem too old for her face. My papa said scared doesn't mean you can't be brave. It just means you care about something worth fighting for. El Paso City Hall's main chamber echoes with the shuffle of papers and nervous conversations as residents file in for the afternoon session. The room smells like old wood and anxiety, with afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. Conrad Hargrove sits in the front row, looking perfectly composed in his tailored navy suit. He occasionally checks his phone with the casual confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. Behind him, 3 attorneys in matching ties review thick folders of documents. Mrs. Alvarez sits with her hands folded in her lap, her prepared speech tucked carefully into her purse. Around her, 24 residents from the neighborhood fill the chamber, some hopeful, others skeptical that their voices will matter in this formal setting. Naomi sits between Lucia and Caleb, the 218 keychain in her pocket, but her father's courage somehow bigger inside her chest. She watches as a local news reporter sets up his camera, wondering if her father can see her from wherever good people go when they die. Council member Patricia Vasquez calls the session to order, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who's heard too many developer presentations this month. We have a request to hear testimony regarding the Riverside Gardens apartment building. Mrs. Alvarez, you have 15 minutes. Mrs. Alvarez stands slowly, her legs unsteady, but her voice clear, as she begins to speak about 12 years of life in the building. Births, deaths, celebrations, struggles. Something shifts in the room's atmosphere. This building is not just bricks and mortar, she says in carefully practiced English. It is where my grandson took his first steps, where Mrs. Chen from 4A taught me to make dumplings when my husband died, where we helped each other through La Pandemia. When her time comes, Lucia stands and speaks about the kitchen incident, how the old stove had been smoking for weeks, how she called the fire department immediately, how no one was hurt and minimal damage occurred. They make it sound like I am dangerous, she says, her accent thick with emotion. But I have lived in this building for 8 years, and never before have I caused problems for anyone. Then Caleb approaches the microphone with a folder thick with documents, as he spreads the evidence across the podium. Forged signatures, manipulated photos, inspection reports with impossible dates. Conrad Hargrove's composed expression begins to crack. These are photocopies of the original inspection reports filed with the city, Caleb explains, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Notice the dates have been altered. The original inspection showed minor violations, easily correctable. These amended reports, filed 3 days later, show critical structural failure. The recording of Conrad's voice discussing accelerating the timeline while the iron's hot plays through the chamber's sound system with crystal clarity in the sudden silence that follows. The clicking of the news camera seems unnaturally loud. Finally, Naomi stands. At 9 years old, she barely reaches the microphone, but her voice carries anyway. My papa died last year, but before he did, he gave me this. She holds up the keychain. He said some people help others just because it's right. He said if I ever needed help, good people would recognize this number. She looks directly at Conrad Hargrove. My papa also said that people who hurt families for money forget that money can't buy back a good name once it's gone. Councilmember Vasquez calls for a 10-minute recess. When they return, the vote is unanimous. Eviction proceedings suspended. Investigation opened into Hargrove Consulting's practices, and immediate review of all pending structural assessments in the district. As the chamber empties, Conrad Hargrove doesn't look back as he leaves through a side exit. The families gather in the hallway, some crying, others laughing, all of them somehow lighter than when they arrived. 3 months later, Riverside Gardens buzzes with the controlled chaos of a community renovation project. The morning air carries the scent of fresh primer and the sounds of laughter mixed with power tools. Caleb stands on a ladder, carefully painting over water stains that have marked the building's walls for years. A little to the left, Mrs. Alvarez calls up to him, directing the coverage of a particularly stubborn spot. At 72, she's appointed herself supervisor of all aesthetic decisions, and nobody argues with her anymore. The building's transformation goes deeper than paint. New management, selected by the residents themselves, has already addressed the electrical issues and installed updated appliances. The rent remains affordable under a community land trust agreement that ensures it always will be. Trevor arrives with his daughter Sarah, a shy 8-year-old who immediately gravitates toward Naomi. The two girls disappear into the courtyard where other children are painting a mural under the supervision of a local artist. How's the new job? Caleb asks, climbing down from the ladder. Construction supervisor. Trevor grins, showing off his hard hat. Turns out, knowing how buildings fall apart makes you pretty good at keeping them together. Javier emerges from the building's basement with Mr. Gutierrez, both of them covered in dust but smiling. The new water heater's installed, he announces. Should be hot showers for everyone by tonight. Elena approaches with a clipboard and good news. The city approved funding for the community garden, she reports, and I got confirmation that the job training program can expand to serve 3 more buildings. As the afternoon work session winds down, residents gather in the courtyard to admire the mural. The children have painted dozens of hands in different colors, all reaching toward a central image of the building itself, in the bottom corner. Barely noticeable unless you know to look for it. Someone has painted 218 in small, neat numbers. Naomi stands beside Caleb, both of them splattered with paint, watching as Nico teaches Sarah how to add her own handprint to the design. Papa would like this, she says quietly. What makes you think so? He always said the best things happen when people stop thinking about what makes them different and start working on what they can build together. Caleb smiles, remembering a similar conversation from years ago, when he was the one who needed to hear about second chances and new beginnings. The keychain has found a permanent home on a small hook by their apartment door, not hidden away like a secret, but displayed like a reminder that help can come from unexpected places. As the sun sets over El Paso, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the courtyard fills with the aroma of Mrs. Alvarez's tamales and the sound of children's laughter. Lucia helps set up tables while residents bring out folding chairs and coolers of cold drinks. You know what I love most about this? Naomi asks, watching Trevor show his daughter how to use a paintbrush properly. What's that? Nobody's running scared anymore. Caleb looks around at the faces gathered in the courtyard. Former strangers who've become neighbors, former enemies who've become allies, and a little girl who somehow knew that the number 218 was never really about the past. It was always about building something better for the future. The evening breeze carries the distant sound of the city bus, children playing in nearby courtyards, and the eternal rhythm of life in a neighborhood where people have learned to take care of each other. And if you listen carefully, you might hear something else. The sound of a community that refused to be moved by anything except their own decision to move forward together. Have you ever witnessed a community come together to fight injustice? Sometimes the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected alliances, proving that courage can be found in the smallest acts of solidarity. Would you like another story?